In the heart of rural Japan lies a story of resilience, tradition, and transformation. This is the story of Yoshihiro Takishita, a visionary architect who has dedicated his life to preserving and revitalizing Japan's cultural heritage through the restoration of minka, traditional Japanese farmhouses that stand as monuments to the past. Minka, once central to rural life, are more than just buildings. They are vessels of history, embodying Japan's rich cultural and architectural traditions. These farmhouses represent the ingenuity of Japan's rural communities, crafted from natural materials like wood, bamboo, and thatch. Yet, as urbanization accelerated after World War II, these rural treasures were abandoned, left to decay amidst the economic and demographic shifts. The rural-urban economic divide in Japan has deep roots. Before World War II, Japan was largely an agrarian society, with the majority of its population living in rural areas. These regions were the backbone of the nation's economy, producing food and sustaining traditional industries. In the past, rural villages were self-sufficient, where each community played a crucial role in Japan's agricultural output. However, as the country moved towards industrialization, urban centers began to rise as beacons of economic development. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Japan's rapid industrialization and modernization during the Meiji Restoration marked the beginning of significant shifts in population dynamics. By the mid-20th century, this urbanization began to gather pace, with many rural residents flocking to cities for better opportunities in factories, business, and trade. Business and trade. Post-World War II, Japan's economic recovery focused heavily on urban development and industrial growth. Cities like Tokyo, Osaka, and Nagoya became economic hubs, while rural areas were left behind. As people flocked to cities for better job opportunities, rural regions experienced depopulation, aging populations, and an increasing economic disparity. These rural areas, once bustling with activity, faced a decline in local industries, struggling to maintain their traditional way of life. One of the most pressing issues in rural Japan today is depopulation. Over the past few decades, many rural communities have seen dramatic declines in their populations. This is a result of younger generations migrating to cities in search of better economic opportunities, leaving behind aging populations with few resources. In some areas, entire villages have been abandoned, with homes left empty and fields left to overgrow. This exodus not only drains the communities of their workforce, but also threatens the survival of local traditions and agricultural practices that have been passed down through generations. As the younger population continues to shrink, rural areas are faced with the reality of an aging society, which exacerbates issues like health care access, employment opportunities, and cultural preservation. Takeshita's work becomes even more vital in this context, as restoring minka and revitalizing rural areas provides a way to bring attention and resources back to these forgotten places. Japan's rapid urbanization created a stark divide. While cities flourished with new industries and infrastructure, rural areas faced a loss of population, resources, and identity. Economic inequality grew, leaving rural communities struggling to preserve their way of life. This rural-urban divide, a critical social issue in Japan, mirrors similar patterns seen globally as nations like the US and South Korea grapple with urban growth, leaving rural regions behind. Yoshihiro Takishita saw this decline not as an end, but as an opportunity. He understood that the preservation of minka could offer a pathway for revitalization. Through the relocation and restoration of these traditional farmhouses, Takeshita has brought new life to these structures, transforming them into modern homes, guest houses, and tourist destinations, while ensuring their cultural legacy is not lost. Takeshita's efforts go beyond architecture. By preserving minka, he revitalizes rural economies. These restored farmhouses attract visitors from across the globe, generating income and creating jobs. Rural areas, often overshadowed by urbanization, are beginning to find new economic opportunities through tourism. Takeshita's approach offers a model for rural revitalization that doesn't discard tradition, but rather integrates it into the future. Tourism in rural Japan now serves as a dual purpose. It supports local economies while preserving the cultural and food supply chain that forms the heart of the nation's agricultural identity. By revitalizing these minka, Takeshita has sparked a broader movement in rural Japan that merges cultural preservation with sustainable development. In the United States, rural economic inequality is compared to the urban parts of the nation. This disparity is solved through urbanization. This means the elimination of rural areas and growth into cities. On the contrary, in South Korea, the country has experienced rapid urbanization concentrated around the capital, Seoul, leading to a rural decline. The problem South Korea faces is the rural areas dying, while younger populations are no longer celebrating their rural heritage of agriculture. This leads to economic and food insecurity in the future. Japan celebrates rural areas. Here, they are not urbanized, and are instead left to figure out how to meet economic demands. Currently, tourism has helped significantly. This not only balances the economy by funding rural areas, but also preserves the food supply and culture. Rather than urbanizing these areas, Japan has been experimenting with sustainable rural development, striving to balance economic growth while preserving its cultural heritage. Takishita's approach, particularly through the preservation of minka, exemplifies this balance. Currently, tourism has played a significant role in revitalizing rural regions. This approach not only boosts local economies, but also preserves the food supply and cultural traditions that are essential to the nation's identity. While Japan faces rural depopulation and economic decline, the country's emphasis on maintaining its rural culture provides a unique path forward. Unlike the model often seen in South Korea or the US, where urbanization is seen as a solution to these issues. An additional challenge in Japan is its culture of conformity. In Japan, conformity is deeply embedded in both urban and rural life. The concept of wa, harmony, dictates that individuals should prioritize the group over personal expression. This affects the approach to both change and integration of new ideas. In rural areas where traditions are more deeply rooted, this conformity often manifests as a resistance to innovation or outside influence. While urban Japan becomes increasingly diverse as cosmopolitan, rural areas may feel left behind. Both in terms of economic development and social change, Takashita's restoration efforts provide a way to bridge this gap, creating opportunities for these communities to thrive without losing the traditions that define them. When it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, connections in Japan, rural communities often lag behind. Japan is a relatively homogeneous society, and rural areas with fewer encounters with foreigners tend to be less aware of global issues like racism. While the younger generation in urban areas is more likely to embrace diversity, rural populations often remain unaware of the complexities of race and ethnicity. In contrast, the United States presents a starkly different situation. Urban areas in the U.S. are at the forefront of racial and ethnic change, with non-whites now forming the majority in many urban counties. However, rural areas remain predominantly white. This racial divide is mirrored in Japan's urban-rural split, where rural areas tend to be more homogeneous and less inclusive of diversity. This lack of engagement with DEI issues in rural Japan can further marginalize communities that are already struggling economically. Despite these differences, Takashita's work highlights the universal power of cultural preservation as a tool for social and economic equity. By bridging the gap between Japan's urban and rural areas, he demonstrates how tradition can drive progress. Takashita's model combines cultural pride with economic opportunity, offering rural communities a chance to reconnect with their roots while revitalizing their economies. Through his innovative approach, Takashita has inspired not only Japan, but also the world to reconsider how we value and protect our cultural heritage. His work reminds us that the past is not a relic, but a foundation for a thriving, inclusive future. It shows that rural communities, far from left behind, can be the key to a sustainable, equitable future if their traditions and heritage are respected and preserved. Yoshihiro Takishita's legacy is a testament to the enduring power of tradition. Through Minka, he has crafted a bridge between history and modernity, ensuring that the rural soul of Japan continues to shine for generations to come. His work not only preserves a piece of Japan's past, but ensures its place in a dynamic future where tradition and progress coexist.